Hello, I'm Ali Cupper and I'm Deputy Mayor of Manger Rural City Council, and we're following up on our conversation about roads. So last week I put a post on social media and asked people what is the worst road in Mildura. They gave great feedback and you gave great feedback, thank you. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go in, we're going to talk to General Manager Daryl Morgan, and he's going to give us some more insight into what's going on with those roads. So come on in. So thank you for meeting with me today. What we did last week, or what I did last week, is I put up a post on social media just about the worst road in Mildura. So very simple question, and it got a whole lot of feedback. We got about 400 comments, and there's some really good feedback in there. And I thought the best way to provide answers to people would just be to bring them into the council office and have a chat with you, because this is what councillors get the benefit of. You know, when we get questions from the community, we can come in and talk to officers and get the answers. But sometimes it's tricky to be able to put those answers back out into the community. So thank you for this. Now, of those 400 posts, or 400 comments, there's a lot of feedback about a lot of different roads, but the number one road that we received feedback on was 7th Street between the bridge and Benetook Avenue. So what can you tell us? What is the first thing people need to know about 7th Street in that section?
So I'm glad you raised that, Ali, and must admit not surprised having a look at the list. So that first thing I can say is that's actually a Vic Roads or a state government road. Like a lot of the roads that we have in our municipality, they're not all council roads. Mm-hmm. There are a lot that are state roads. Yeah. So technically the highways are the responsibility of the state government, mm-hmm. and council looks after all the other roads. So we do have an extensive network, over 5,000 kilometres of roads, yeah. But the highways are the responsibility of our state government, or as we call them, Vic Roads.
And what would you're an engineer? Yes, an engineer. What would you say when you see that road, when you look at 7th Street, and that section of 7th Street, what would be your assessment of that road?
Yeah, so a lot of roads that we see, they always have defects. So they're not, unless they're brand new, there'll always be potholes or there'll be issues with line marking. Mm-hmm. But when they get to the stage where they're considerably unsafe, and I would suggest the bit from San Mateo, so where you come across the bridge, yeah. on the roundabout, through to the Benetook corner, yeah. That is getting to the point where it's unsafe. And if you look at that, there's a lot of depressions in the actual mm-hmm. road where the trucks travel on. Mm-hmm. So I've seen vehicles when I've been driving along, particularly following a vehicle, where some of the trucks are trying to avoid those depressions, yeah. in the road. So I would suggest it is extremely unsafe. Mm-hmm. Vic Roads, we've raised this with Vic Roads on a number of occasions. Mm-hmm. We do inspections on our roads. We do it across all of our roads, and we normally inspect our roads a couple of times a year. So mm-hmm. every single road's inspected. Mm-hmm. We also inspect some of the Vic Roads roads, and so where we find defects, and obviously 7th Street is one of those ones, mm-hmm. that have been raised as a concern, yeah. we provide that information back to them. So we will tell them, we've picked up some defects, whether they're potholes, whether they're shoves or edge breaks or cracking, and yeah. feed that in. And then normally what they'll do is they'll put it on a list for repairs. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately at this stage we haven't got anything back from the department to say when they're likely to repair that road.
Right. And meanwhile there's a lot of people in the community who think it's a council road.
Yeah, exactly, and not just 7th Street. There's a number of other roads, and even Benetook Avenue right up to 15th Street, so from 7th Street through. That's yeah. another example. The Calder Highway, mm-hmm. 15th Street. Even when you travel along 11th Street out through Ranfurly Way and out to Merbeen, mm-hmm. so that's another example. So there are a lot of roads within our network, and as I said, not surprised that, and I think probably the top 10, most of those are actually Vic Roads roads. So disappointing, but we are definitely advocating on behalf of Mildura residents, yeah. that the Vic Roads roads get the same attention as to what council puts into our roads.
Great. And at the same time, we also have a lot of roads, our own roads, that we get a fair bit of feedback on too. For example, I've had some feedback about, you know, the patching, what's it called again? The seal,
yeah, we do.
Sealing.
Yeah, so there's a few.
The crack seals.
Crack sealing.
That was the word, yes.
Crack sealing. And
yes.
yeah, so there's a few different techniques we employ.
Yeah.
Like everything, when we buy something that's brand new, it's void of defects, but over a period of time things wear out. Yeah. And sometimes you need to fix things or intervene, mm-hmm. And sometimes you just let them run their natural course and then you replace them at the end. Yeah. And a good example probably is someone's car. Like when mm-hmm. it's brand new, you've got brand new tyres, the engine works really well, mm-hmm. but you might do a service on it every year, but you might not replace your tyres every year. Yeah. Roads are no different. And what we have is we have a fairly sophisticated model of how we manage our roads. You know, when someone rings up about a defect or a pothole, we have a certain time we have to go out and inspect it, and then if it is a significant safety risk, we then have to fix it within a certain time period. So that's all monitored, but some of the things you've mentioned about the crack ceiling, and a lot of people might see the squiggly lines on the road, looks fairly ordinary.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like it.
Doesn't look attractive,
Yeah.
but it actually works.
Yeah.
It stops the water getting in there, and water is our worst enemy.
Right.
Once the water gets into the road, it tends to break up quite quickly. So one of the methods we employ is to seal those cracks with a bitumen-like product.
Yeah.
Crack mats is another thing, so you might see these little squares. And your traditional methods of patching or filling potholes is another one we tend to employ.
Yeah.
We do that because we're trying to extend the life of the road rather than have to say, okay, it's got a couple of potholes. We're not going to go in and replace that whole road and reconstruct it because that would be quite expensive to do. But where we can, we will do those minor works to make sure we can get the full life out of that road.
Yeah.
But at some point, we'll need to reconstruct that road or reseal it. And we're about ready to gear up with our resealing bitumen program. So that normally covers about 10% of our network, and we do that over the summer months when the weather warms up.
Yeah. So how much of our budget or our capital budget is directed towards roads?
So about 40% of our whole capital budget is directed towards roads. So that's reconstruction, maintenance and so on. So it's a significant dollar value.
Yeah, and we've got 5,000 kilometres of roads.
Over 5,000 kilometres. So it even though it's a lot of money, it still doesn't cover the full network. Now, we do rely on external funding, but that's the reason why we do all these other maintenance activities like patching, crack filling and the like, because you just can't afford to keep reconstructing things. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah. And despite the fact that we are trying to do a lot with scarce resources, with the financial pressures that rural and regional councils have, including ours, we still have a pretty good strike rate with our council roads. Is that correct in terms of the national average?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, more than 80% of our roads are in what we consider to be good condition. So when I say good, it's all documented in terms of what that means. But we rate our roads in terms of their condition.
And I guess a question I would have too, when we talk about the crack seals and some of those maintenance techniques that aren't quite as popular, I'm just thinking, if we didn't do that, and if we didn't do that to extend the life of those assets before we have to completely redo them again, it would cost a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. It's a bit like painting your house before it really needs to be painted.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily paint the entire house. You might just patch up one wall or around a window. But if we did it all the time when we didn't need to, it would cost us millions and millions and millions. The other thing too is if we didn't do any of that maintenance, the ugly stuff, I suppose, we talked about the squiggly lines and so on, doesn't look that attractive. But if we didn't do that, then what we would have is a road that deteriorated quite quickly. So some of those cracks, if left untreated, become bigger cracks, big potholes, then big shoves in the road, and then we would have a network which would be quite unsafe. Fortunately, drawing comparison with that 7th Street, probably to the same extent of what we've got there.
From our Facebook post that we put the other day, we got like a whole heap of comments. Like, as I mentioned before, 400 comments. And from there, we've been able to use the magic of AI to get a hit list. So the top 10 roads that people are concerned about in Mildura, right? So here they are. Now, while I'm reading them out, if you could help, Daryl, by pointing out if they're a council road or a state road, okay?
I might even keep score, Ali.
Great. Keep score. That's a great idea. Okay. Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, so the first one, actually we'll start from number 10. So 10. So number 10 road in Mildura, it is 15th Street.
Well, that'd be a state road. As we know, that's a highway. So that's one for the state.
Great. Number 9 on the list is Ranfurly Way.
It's another one for the state.
Okay. Number 8, San Mateo Avenue.
Okay, so San Mateo, just to clarify, down near 7th Street is actually state government.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, as it heads up towards 15th, is council. So
That's
we will take that one.
Great, we'll take that one. Okay, awesome. 7 on the list is Deakin Avenue.
Yep. So that's a state road again. So another one for the state.
Another one for the state. Okay, Calder Highway.
Calder Highway is definitely the state.
State. Okay, number 5 on the list is 14th Street.
So 14th Street is ours. There are where it intersects, say, Deakin Avenue, that would be in the state, but 14th Street is definitely council's.
Yep. Okay, number 4, 11th Street.
11th Street, depending on which part it is, from Benetook Avenue all the way up through to Merbeen is is the state.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is 11th Street. Now, I'm not sure which bit they're referring to.
We've got here between Walnut and Ontario.
Okay, so that's a state government component.
We've got between Ontario and Riverside.
Yep, state.
Riverside intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Lake School crossing.
Mm-hmm.
And train tracks.
Yep, train tracks, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Just on that though, Ali, there are some sections of our 11th Street sort of
Yeah.
heading back towards, say, Morpong Avenue. There has been some works and some patching done on that. And if anyone's driven there in the last couple of days with the rain, there's a few patches that are occurring now because there was a few potholes. So our teams are out there at the moment.
Yeah, awesome. Benetook Avenue is number 3.
Benetook Avenue is another one, state.
Okay, great. Number 2 is the Sturt Highway.
Mm-hmm. Definitely state highway.
State. And number 1, by a long shot, so mentioned 48 times, is 7th Street, particularly between the bridge and Benetook Avenue.
Yeah, so again, state road.
Great. So what can we do, given that so many of these roads are actually not our roads? What can we do to try and get the funding that we need?
So there's probably a couple of things, and I know from a council perspective we have regular meetings with the state government, the state department, particularly around all sorts of things, and we do advocate on behalf of the community, and we'll continue to do that. Now, what I've found in the past that really does help is if local people raise these issues directly with the state as well. So as you know, you can certainly put stuff on our our Facebook posts, contact the Council Service Centre, but the best thing is if people contact the state directly, so Vic Road's website, we might even be able to post some links that make it easy for people. But more people that complain about this, then hopefully that will turn into results on the road.
Great. This is really important to know, the difference between state roads and council roads. Some people would say, well, look, if you've got a council crew out there fixing a council road anyway, why aren't you just patching a few potholes in the state roads? What would you say to that?
Yeah, it seems simple to do that, and that is a frustration when you see a council works crew just around the corner fixing. Why can't we just fix a couple of potholes? The real issue, Ali, is it all comes back to funding and responsibility. Now, we are ratepayers. We live and work in the Mildura municipality, so we pay rates, and we pay rates for council to fix council roads. And we also pay taxes to the state, and unfortunately the taxes are meant to go to fixing roads, amongst other things. So the last thing I want to do is have our ratepayer-funded roadworks fixing state responsible roads. So really in a nutshell that's what it is. But again, we do things. We will certainly assist with the state. Like we put some of our signs out. The state government might ask us if we can put some signs on some of their road defects, and I know there's one in that list on Ranfurly Way where there's some council signs on a Vic Roads road or a state road, but doesn't mean it's not their responsibility. We're just trying to assist it. But we've got to draw the line as to how far we go.
Yeah, sure.
And really, the state has a responsibility to fix these roads. They are collecting taxes from us ratepayers. So the last thing we want to do is use our rates to fix tax issues or tax-funded responsibilities.
Sure. And look, we're always trying to do a lot with scarce resources, obviously, especially in rural and regional councils where financial sustainability is an issue. But we're not off the hook. We've still got roads that we need to take care of. One piece of feedback that we got was in relation to Pasadena Grove, where there were a number of people commenting about a hazard that was on that particular road. Now, is that one of our roads?
Pasadena is, yeah.
Right.
So, and look, I don't know whether you've got some time, but we can certainly go out and have a look, because I think also there was a mention of, say, San Mateo Avenue, the section we just mentioned is a council road.
Yeah.
So there was some concerns around that. So if you wanted to, we can certainly go and have a look at that in a bit more detail.
Okay, Daryl, so here we are, Pasadena Grove. Now, Pasadena Grove was on the list, so on the and it is a council road, so it's one of ours. And so what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so as we said, Ali, this is a council road. And I think it was mentioned in the post around like tree roots making some damage in the road pavement. But what you see here, and you can sort of see these squiggly
lines that we talked about. We mentioned that before back in my office.
Yeah.
This is a good example of where we've done some maintenance on our roads. So what we call crack sealing. So the squiggly lines before we filled them in with bitumen were just cracks in the road. Now this is a typical residential street. It's not in perfect condition, but for a residential area, it's quite common to see this level of wear and tear. And as I said before, one of our interventions is to maintain the roads by doing this sort of maintenance work. Doesn't look ideal, but it's still serviceable, and at some future point we'll probably do a whole new resurface, so a bitumen seal over the top. But it still has good texture, like there's still good grip on the road, it's still waterproof, so it, again, not ideal, but we don't have significant ruts and defects and potholes in the road which would trigger a real upgrade at this point in time.
Yeah, sure. And I know the feedback referred to a tree root. You were able to check that out. What did you find?
Yeah, I've had a look on the road, and we'll get our teams to have a bit more detailed look, but I've driven up and down a few times. I think what they might be referring to is some of these cracks possibly were caused by, and you can see a tree here, caused by trees too close to the road where they do lift the pavement from time to time. And that is quite common for that to happen in residential roads. Where it becomes really significant and creates a bit of a speed hump, I suppose, we'll actually address that. But this street, I think most of these cracks looking at them is just because it's an older road. But again, not to the point where we need to completely reconstruct it at this point in time. So we're trying to get the maximum life out of this road by doing patching, crack filling and other treatments. If we had to reconstruct this road, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whereas this sort of work, you know, we're probably talking only a few $1,000s and in some cases a few $100s. So it is definitely the right way to do it. So we're looking at different types of techniques, and as I said before, it doesn't look 100% perfect, but we're maintaining the asset and we're trying to get the best bang for our buck and extend the life to the full extent, so that eventually when it does get to the stage where we need to replace it or reconstruct it, then we're spending that money wisely.
All right, so Daryl, so we were talking before about the different roads. We've got some state roads, obviously a lot of state roads that need attention. We've got some council roads as well, and we've got some feedback on council roads. This is San Mateo Avenue. What sort of feedback have we got on San Mateo?
Yeah, so I think that was on your list, Ali, as one of the council roads that was identified as not being, excuse me, in perfect condition. Just looking at the road, the pavement itself is in fairly good condition. There is some signs of where we've done some crack sealing, which is quite understandable. It's not a brand new road, but I think one of the issues is probably around the line marking. And I think if you look at it, there's old lines that have come through, and I know we did an upgrade on the traffic management mainly to focus on pedestrians and cyclists a number of years ago. So we had to black out the old lines, and looking at it, unfortunately, they've come back through. So we've got the old lines with the new, which is, I think, a little bit confusing. So definitely we'll need to look at that from a maintenance perspective and address that at some point.
Great.